So, what exactly is the Strait of Hormuz that we keep talking about, and why is it so important? The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important oil passage and lies between Oman and Iran. It forms the choke point between the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The strait has a shipping lane 3 kilometers wide in either direction. Traveling by sea, the strait is the only means of transporting goods or people to the rest of the world. How much oil and gas passes through it? Well, this is an indication of how crucial this stretch of the sea is. Around a sixth of the world's oil moves through this strait. That's 17.2 million barrels per day. The OPEC members, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait and Iraq export most of their crude oil via the Strait of Hormuz. The world's biggest liquefied natural gas or LNG exporter, Qatar, exports almost all of its LNG through this strait. Here's a look at how the crude oil is exported to different parts of the world once it is extracted. And this report tells you the genesis of how crude oil, the raw material, is taken from one place in the world and shipped to all over.
As crude oil is extracted from the ground, it begins a long journey to the refinery and ultimately to the consumer. Every year, 4 billion tonnes of oil are produced and transported all around the globe to its final destination. There are two main methods of transporting oil and oil-based products: by pipeline, usually over land, and by sea. These days, about half the world's oil travels by sea. In 2008, more than 2.5 billion tonnes were carried by supertankers, making sea transport and oil tankers in particular an important feature of the world economy. The busiest sea routes over which oil is carried are characterized by major bottlenecks, narrow straits where the traffic is particularly heavy. These strategic points are the Panama Canal in the heart of Central America, which carries some 800,000 barrels of oil a day; the Bosphorus Straits, dividing Europe and Asia, with nearly 3 million barrels a day; the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, between the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, with 3.2 million barrels a day; the Suez Canal, which links the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, with its 2 million barrels a day; the Straits of Malacca between Malaysia and Indonesia, which carries 14 million barrels a day. But the oil world's biggest bottleneck is to be found in the strategic Strait of Hormuz, where 17 million barrels a day pass between the coast of Oman and Iran, representing about 35% of the total world traffic. But tension between Iran and the international community over Tehran's apparent intention to develop nuclear weapons have made this narrow 40-kilometre wide waterway a source of concern. Iran is again threatening to close the strait, but the US is adamant that closing would be tantamount to an act of war.
Now, the Iranian government has hit out at the US, saying that US sanctions on the country tantamount to economic terrorism. Iran's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Kazem Gharib Abadi, made these comments during an emergency meeting with the UN nuclear watchdog. The meeting was called by the United States after Tehran breached the landmark 2015 nuclear deal.
The United States has imposed economic terrorism against some states, including through imposition of sanctions and extraterritorial application of them. The sadistic tendency of the United States to use illegal unilateral sanctions as an instrument to coerce sovereign states and private entities should come to an end.
The Iranian ambassador also confirmed that last week it had exceeded the stockpile of enriched uranium permitted. He also stressed the move was in response to the US withdrawing from the nuclear deal and imposing sanctions against the country. The US also
CPOA and violated its own commitments, but through political and economic pressure, prevents international community, states and private entities to implement their commitments towards Iran.
Shifting focus away from that, the U.S. also upped its attack on the Iranian regime at the closed-door session. During the meeting, the U.S. accused Iran of nuclear extortion, but however stressed that it's open for negotiations but without any preconditions. After the meeting, the United States also released a statement which read, and I quote here, "There is no credible reason for Iran to expand its nuclear program, and there is no way to read this as anything other than a crude and transparent attempt to extort payments from the international community." The US has made clear that we are open to negotiations without preconditions and that we are offering Iran the possibility of a full normalization of relations, unquote.